Still ahead, we'll share with you the remarkable story of a runner who came back after a cardiac arrest. But first, a very heartwarming story. When Zachary Randall lost a friend to an illness, he decided to run a marathon in her honor. Zachary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into running and what kind of running you were doing as the pandemic hit this year. We've all been adapting, of course, this year. So tell me a little bit about your running story.
Well, my story begins in grade 8 when I joined the cross-country team for the first time.
Okay. And what was that experience like?
Well, it was an experience that I still feel proud about.
Oh, good.
I made it to the finals for the first time ever.
Okay. And then tell me about running as an adult. When did you keep running all that time, or did you take it up again later in life?
I had hoped to continue running through college, but things took a different turn. But I never gave up on running just for fun.
Okay. And did you do races?
I did. My biggest race that was run in 2008 was the Niagara Falls Half Marathon.
Okay. And how did that go?
Well, I had spent my months training. I had been running 15 to 10K almost daily. I lived in St. Catharines at the time, and I was able to run between there and Virgil.
And how did the race go?
It went immensely well. I placed third in my age group.
Wow. That's pretty good. What was the experience like for you? Because the Niagara event is really interesting. I know the marathon crosses the international border, so it's a pretty cool event. Tell me what the whole experience was like.
Well, the experience is very vivid because it was pushing my comfort zone. I had never run 13 miles before, and I had to wake up immensely early and be taken to the falls, where I boarded a bus that took me to the starting line. We waited there for a good long while before the race began, and when it began, everyone was pushing themselves. It was an experience that I have not forgotten.
Yeah. So tell me about how you adapted this year when the pandemic hit. Did you have plans to do other events, other races this year?
I did. I was planning to do Tartan Day, the 5K in Hamilton.
Okay.
I was also considering the Around the Bay 5K, the sub-event of the 30K. But then the pandemic hit and things changed.
Yeah. Did you decide at that point you would do some virtual events? Like what happened when things changed?
I did decide to do virtual events in the end, but there was a change that did make me decide that ultimately.
So let's talk about that. This is a story. You had a friend, and unfortunately she had cancer. So tell us a little bit about her.
Her name was Julianne Miszk. She was a very extraordinary soul. She was diagnosed with osteosarcoma very young, and, well, she always lived with the fear of life and death being right there beside her.
Yeah.
But she never let it show or deter her from doing what she wanted. She was an class athlete. She was a champion. She did the Terry Fox run year after year. She competed in numerous 5K events. She always did the Niagara Falls 5K. We met when I was at Niagara College in a new program called CICE.
So you met at Niagara College, and you were both runners, obviously, and you became friends, and then, unfortunately, she didn't survive her battle with cancer.
No, she passed away this past year with her family at her side.
And how did that affect you?
I have not always had the easiest time making friends, but the closest friends I've ever had are people who I was able to run with, train beside. And even though we had known each other for only a brief time by comparison to others, Julianne's death was difficult to deal with. She had raised a great deal of awareness. She had touched many people. She has still found ways to bring people together, even in death.
So how did you respond to her death, and how did that affect your decision to keep running and to do something in her memory?
If we're being honest, at first I didn't know what to do because Julianne's death was it was a shock. The Tartan Day race I had told you about, it had gone virtual, and I was hoping she and I might do it together. But then I found out about her death about a few weeks later, and after I finished Tartan Day, I really did not know what to do because it seemed to take a lot of the fun out of racing.
So you couldn't decide whether to go on or not, I guess.
Not so easily, no.
Yeah.
I was planning on doing another 5K from Hamilton, but at the same time, I kept coming back to this other event, the Scotiabank Marathon. I was planning on entering this 5K, but every time I misspelled something, the marathon name kept coming up. And I just kept thinking that even though Julianne has passed on, I could continue to race in her name. Hers and so many others who have gone on too soon.
Yeah. So you decided to do the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon this year, virtually, of course.
I did. I had never run a full marathon, and I'll be honest, I'm not quite the runner I used to be when I did the half marathon in 2008. But I just knew that I had to do this. I know I have to continue. So I set out doing it into broken distances as fast as I could, power walking and running. I did it over the course of 5 days.
And what did it mean to you to do this in memory of your friend?
I would say that even though when you're in a race and you're never sure how it's going to end or where it's going to end for you, really, I have to be able to do this if I'm going to prove myself to honor her memory. If someone who could never give up, even when death was staring them in the face, never blinked in the face of it, then surely I must have the strength to do the same.
Must have been very satisfying for you. I'm sure it was emotional as well, but to complete that distance, to fulfill your objective, to honor your friend that way, that must have meant a lot to you.
It did. And it was my first ever marathon, even though it was virtual. And I didn't know how I was going to finish or how soon. Some people even said that you're being obsessive about this. And, well, perhaps I was. But I just kept thinking about Julianne, about even Terry Fox, or even another young man who was affected by this disease, Frederick Steinmark. People who've inspired me, not just because I knew who they were, but because they had it in them to not just roll over and die, when it would have been so easy to give in to the fear and doubt of the unknown.
So what does this make you think of in terms of what you could do next, Zachary?
Well, I'm really not sure what it means I could do next. But at the same time, I just know that if I could do this, then surely I can do more in my life. Not just as a runner, but as a man.
Well, it's a very powerful story. I think you've done an amazing thing to honor your friend in this way, and I think you've empowered yourself at the same time, which is really inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing the story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Zachary Randall, who ran a marathon to honor a friend he lost. Coming up next, returning to life and training after a cardiac arrest. This episode of Irun